Okay, so let's begin. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O Lord, giver of life and source of our freedom, we are reminded that yours is the earth in its fullness, the world and those who dwell in it. We know that it is from your hand that we have received all that we have and are and will be. Gracious and loving God, we understand that you call us to be the stewards of your abundance, the caretakers of all you have entrusted to us. Help us always to use your gifts wisely and teach us to share them generously. May our faithful stewardship bear witness to the love of Christ in our lives. We pray this with grateful hearts in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Spirit. Okay, so Christine and Abby have put together an amazing presentation on all things wonderful. And if you have questions as we're going along, just unmute yourself and jump in and ask them. We'll also have time at the end for any questions that any and all of you might have. I think that's it, right? So I'm going to just turn things over to Christine.
Sounds great. Thanks, Nick. So as we walk through this presentation, majority of the slides are coming from National's new Treasurer Handbook. I really like it. I'm excited about it. I don't know if you guys got a chance to look through it, but it gets much more into the technical items that need to be addressed. So I was happy to see some of those changes. What I don't like, unfortunately, is through Zoom, when I'm sharing the slides, I can only see about 3 of you. So I generally like to be able to gauge people's reactions to see if you are understanding, not understanding, or following, not following what I'm saying. So since I cannot see majority of your faces, if you need me to go through something in more detail or slower, please speak up because I can't really see you guys to use you as a visual. This first slide here that was in the handbook, I just wanted to point out, I thought it was a great summary for the society. And what I wanted to point out on here is we all have different talents. And the talent of the treasurer that really helps the society is to make sure that they're keeping the accurate records of all the money received and the money spent. So I just want to make sure to point that out. And I want to thank you all for being here, whether you're here to learn something new, you are here as a refresher for things that you already know, or if you are here to share some of the knowledge that you have. It sounds like there's a variety of treasurers, presidents, vice presidents, some treasurers that have been around for a while, some that are very new, have not been here very long. So when I go through the slides, I don't intend to go through each of them in detail. If you've skipped ahead and already looked at these slides, there is a lot of information in them, but I'm going to highlight some of the items I want to make sure to call to your attention. But certainly for those of you that are newer, if you have questions on anything that I didn't discuss or go over, please stop me and we can talk through that in more detail. This first slide here, the handbook really called out at a very high level some of the roles that the treasurer takes on. A few things that I want to call out here is, National does recommend that all bank accounts are reconciled monthly, which is fantastic. They should absolutely be done on a formal level monthly. But I want to make sure, as I think all of you are aware, to make sure that you're looking at your bank account more frequently than that and make sure that there's nothing fraudulent happening in there. I believe most of you are aware of some of the check fraud that we've had over the years, ACH fraud across the conferences. So just make sure that you're not waiting until the end of the month to look at that, because you may be in for a real surprise if you're not keeping on top of that. The annual audit, we will talk about that in more detail in future slides, as well as the last bullet on here you'll see is a new item for tracking of donations that donors give in aggregate or a one-time donation that are 5,000 or more. That is a requirement for the 990s that we disclose, but we will talk about that more in slide 12. But since there are some newer members on there, when we go through some of the slides, we'll hit on some of this in more detail. But if not, make sure that you flag us and we can talk about something and more. I know that as treasurers, you're all tasked with a lot of reporting. There's a lot that you have to give to us. There's a lot that we request. I know someone mentioned, it seems like each month there's something that the treasurer has to submit, and there is. But it's important that we demonstrate the good stewardship to our parishes, our pastors, our donors, as well as the legal authorities. So I thank you for making sure that you're doing all that reporting. If you looked at the handbook, you will see that they put the conferences into 3 different options of how you can be organized. We at the Dayton district level are organized under what they were referring to as option 1. So option 1 means that we have one employer identification number for all of the conferences. So you all roll up under the one EIN, which is then why you have to submit your quarterly reports to us, and we do all the reporting to the IRS based on that. So as you're reading through the handbook, just keep in mind, they give you a few different, if you're option 1, 2, or 3, we are option 1. For audits at the council level, we are an independent. We have our independent audit done annually. That means we have Flagel, Huber, and Flagler is our auditors. They come in. Several of the conferences, well, I guess I should say each conference is subject to testing by our external auditors. And when I say subject, that means you could be picked for requests that they may have. I'm sorry, I'm seeing chat. Make sure that none of this is anything that I need to go over. Okay, sorry. So your conference could be picked for testing. A lot of the conferences do get picked on a rotational basis to have your bank balance confirmed directly with your bank. So a lot of you will see that you're tested that way. They could be testing you looking at fluctuations in your revenue or your expenses. A lot of that, thankfully, Abby or I can answer based on what you guys give us in your quarterly reporting. It's especially helpful sometimes if you guys may have some type of unusual item and maybe you put a little note on the quarterly report, then we can help address their questions at that point. If not, then we may follow up with you. So that is the first level of audit. The second level is that each conference is also required to conduct an internal audit. So this internal audit can be done by 2 unrelated members of the conference that are not involved in the finances. So likely not going to be your treasurer and not going to be your president or if you have an unrelated external party, or potentially you may want to tag team with another conference. So maybe you'll help each other and cross help. These would be done each August and September and then submitted to the council by September 30th. I know this timing may be new for some of you to see what we're officially putting out there as a due date. I don't know that we've officially had a due date in there before, but this is now mirroring what National is saying should be done. Does anyone have any questions on the audit process before we move on?
This is Barb. Are we auditing the last year or are we auditing the year that we're in?
The year that you're in.
Okay.
Okay, well, if anybody has more, you can ask at the end.
I have a question. I need a little clarification. We're an awfully small conference people-wise. If we want to do an in-house audit, we could still pick 2 of our conference members that are not the president and not a treasurer, and they can do this audit for us or with us. I'd have to be, I mean, because I have all the paper where I have all the information. But is that okay?
Well, they would have to not be involved in any of that as well. So they're not going to be anybody who has access to your bank account. There are not going to be anybody that can write checks. So I know some conferences, even though they may not be a treasurer, they do allow some members to write checks. So it would need to be somebody that is not involved or has access to writing checks. Now, as far as for you not being involved as the treasurer, you are going to be heavily involved as the one providing the information that they ask. So it could be two of your members that are not involved in the financial process and also not related, right? So you wouldn't want someone's spouse or child to be doing the audit. You want to understand that they could have an unbiased view of when they're doing the audit. But absolutely, if you have two members like that, they could do it. It could be another conference that does it or an external person if you have someone else.
I have a quick question.
Thank you.
I like to have my audits done by, we have one of our members is a retired banker. And he understands what's going on. However, he has a debit card because he buys the milk for the pantry. Does that make him ineligible for this? That's all he does is buy his milk for the pantry when it's time. But
Yeah.
he's a has to be a signatory on the,
Yeah, unfortunately, if he has access to the bank account, I would say that no, he should not be the one doing it. Because unfortunately, although I hope this would not be the case, I'm not saying that he is, but he would have the ability to access your account and do something fraudulently if he wanted to, and then cover it up because he's doing the audit. I'm not saying he's doing that, but
yeah, he doesn't have like, the bank makes us sign people up and give us a code to be able to log on to the bank information. So he does not have that. All he has is his signature on it, on the bank formation thing, and a debit card. I would really like to use him because he knows what the heck he's doing.
yeah, I understand. And maybe we can talk about that offline.
Okay.
Because initially I'm thinking he still has access and he could do something and he'd be auditing his own work. But maybe you have other controls in place that would be mitigating that concern.
Have you
But maybe,
asked,
Okay, by the way, I've only got, we have our conference meets at 7 o'clock, so I've got until 6:45.
okay.
Maybe I can talk to you tomorrow or something like that.
Okay, yeah,
have
absolutely.
you asked him yet? Because he might recognize that there's kind of a conflict of interest kind of thing, a potential one, since he probably, if he understands auditing, he would know that it's probably best to have somebody who is really separate from the account. It's just standard practice. I mean, the whole because of the whole purpose of auditing is basically just to get an objective look at finances.
Any other questions on that before we move on?
Christine, I've got a question. This is Kevin from St. Henry's. The question was asked earlier if the audit was for the current year or the previous year. Well, we're doing our audit in September. Does it go back a year? So that would include 2024 and 2025?
So it would be October 1, 2024 to September 30th, 2025.
Okay. Would it be okay if we did it from September of 2024 to August of 2025? Would it be okay if we did it for that period? Because that's how we did it last year. We did it for the current year back to, or
I mean, if you're undergoing the audit right now, I would not say that you would need to change it going forward. And I know we haven't set a lot of clarity on this in the past, but now that we have National's, guide of, the best practice of how it should be done. So certainly if you already have it underway, I wouldn't change what you're doing, but, maybe next year I would have it start October 1 to September 30th. And then that way it is the fiscal year for your conference.
here's the question. If it's due September the 30th, the audit, correct? So, but how can it include September? We'd almost have to have it in November to include September. So that's a bit of an issue.
I would agree. I would agree.
Well, we do pick the months. I'm gonna be your auditor coming in next week, but and we pick the months. So, and we had ours done in August, so we just didn't pick September of this year because we hadn't gotten there yet, and I hadn't closed out August. So we actually, when they did mine, we used July as one of the months, and so we just took months that we already had records for that year. So you're randomly picking some, and I get to pick, so I won't pick I won't pick the end of September, and I won't pick, September of the previous year. So I think you'll be fine because we're not doing every single month of the year. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think for now, I think that's fine. I think I will relook into that and revisit that for future because we don't want to exclude a month. And not that I'm saying anyone is doing anything wrong, but if they know that we're never going to be auditing September, then does something happen in September? But maybe it gets back to Kevin's of maybe the audit goes September all the way through August or something. But so I will think on that. But certainly what you guys are doing for now sounds great. I would keep doing what you're doing.
The reason Nationals wants it done by the before the end of the fiscal year has more to do with new officers, because a lot of times new presidents and sometimes new treasurers begin on October 1. So just so that they have something to kind of start with is the reason why Nationals recommends that it be done by the end of September.
And which is also why it was going to make it difficult if we went back to September of last year to start our audit, because I wasn't the treasurer then, didn't really, I couldn't really explain if they were looking in depth at a month where I wasn't even on board yet. So I can see both sides. I really am not sure what the answer is, but.
Okay, well, Nick and I we'll think on that and then we'll get back to you guys with some clarification. But for what you're doing for now, go ahead and keep doing that. Oops. Controls are in place to help protect your conference. It's there to help protect you as treasurers, as presidents, anyone that has access to the financials, as well as your conference and the society. So just as for the home visits that requires 2 Vincentions, we also want to make sure that any monetary transactions would involve 2 individuals as well. So, just make sure that when you're counting cash or anything that you have your 2 individuals, same as if the treasurer is reimbursing themselves, that someone else is signing off on that as authorization. So nothing new here, but a lot of the handbook addresses controls that we should have in place to help protect ourselves as treasurers, as well as the society. So if you're not familiar with those, please review these. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out with me and, what may be able to best help your conference.
Can I ask
Christine?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Who's first? I was just going to say that last bullet where it says if the treasurer, that we should not reimburse ourselves, which that's the way we do it. And I have the president reimburse me if I need to be reimbursed. But this says that I have to have 2 conference members that have signing authority sign the check, which we don't normally have more than 1 person signing a check. Is that definitely required that 2 people would have to
I
sign.
would say that this is National's best practice. So that is what National is recommending. I do understand that most conferences, I know we do not at the district level either, do not require 2 signatures. So if that is not a control that you currently have in place, then I don't think you need to do that. But again, this is to help protect the treasurer and the conference as well. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking through what controls you have in place.
So Christine, my question was, so I started our money counters at St. Luke now are counting our collection. But there are a set of checks that are written to St. Vincent de Paul. There's a set that are written to St. Luke for St. Vincent de Paul, and there's cash. And so our money counters, they're counting everyone individually. But throughout the month, and I get checks that are sent to the church office that I just take and deposit. So I don't really have anybody counting those except me, and they're onesies and twosies. So I don't know what a process, a non-cumbersome process I can create for those that are just kind of come in as they come in.
I have the same process where most of our money is counted by the same people who count the collection, and they're not Vincentians. But they do sign off, and the parish treasurer does over the work, and in fact, he makes the deposit in the bank of all the checks and stuff like that. But I do get a couple of checks from time to time. Some are donations, some are other stuff. And I just take them, put them in the bank and record it in my database.
So I don't know, and I would like to open it up and see what others have as best practices for you, Patty. My initial thought is there a way when so if these checks are coming to the parish, the one-offs, the ones and twos, is there a way for the person at the parish office that's getting it to you is recording those checks, and then they can pass that along to your president or someone else there at the conference, and they can then check and see if it gets deposited. Now, I'm not saying you would ever not deposit it or do any of that, but that's really what it's getting at, is to make sure that all the checks that came to St. Vincent are making their way and getting deposited. So, you know, off the top of my head, that is one suggestion, but I'm curious if any of the other treasurers or conferences experience this and if they've done any type of controls they've put in place to help mitigate that.
I think asking our church office to, and it would be our secretary, to do that extra work. I don't know. I would like to know what other treasurers are doing, because it's kind of an added, I guess we could figure it out, but we're only talking maybe, 5 or 10 checks that come in through the month. So how much of a cumbersome process do you want to put in for that purpose? But if we have to do it, we'll figure it out. But if anybody has ideas or how they handle it, I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I kind of took a lot of the guidelines that are really, really strict and specific as being primarily for handling cash. And then same as you, our collections go through the church, and we rarely get anything directly to us. Almost everything is going through the church collections, and they have those processes in place where they go into a locked room with multiple people and count and double count and record. And then when they pull out the St. Vincent de Paul donations for me to pick up, they have them recorded in a log, and they've logged. I'd have to look to see. I can't remember if she's got the amount. I know she's she's tracking the number of checks and whether the amount is on her log as well. But from what you said, I thought, well, maybe and that's where it ends. I have to sign for it, and then I take it and then I deposit them, and I keep the checks, and usually they're remote deposited, and I keep track of when I've deposited them and then keep the checks. But I guess if there was a question, I always thought, well, they could go back to the church secretary where I signed for them, and she could say, well, she signed for this number of checks and hopefully this amount. But I don't know whether I could get a copy of that, because the problem is that log has all of them. So for all of the parishes or all the churches in our parish family, I think there's other people coming and signing for things. So I don't think she'd want to give me a copy of that, the whole thing. But I figure the record's there. If there was ever a question, they could go back to her, and that would be the record. But I don't know. That's how it seems to work at St. Mary of the Assumption.
Yeah, our church doesn't log in checks that are made out to St. Luke for purpose of St. Vincent. They don't record the details. They just record the total, and then they write us a check for that total. And then about half our collection is made out to St. Vincent de Paul. So then those are sent directly to me, but our money counters are now adding those up for us just to verify. But there's no record kept. And of course, cash, usually you don't know who contributed that. But so I don't know. We're probably closer to what JC does because we're in the same family. And I don't know what St. Bridget does. So.
Well, I think that you guys are considering these controls and considering you understand what it is that they're meant to do. I think if you just consider what may be best for your conference. So what is the best cost benefit wise, keeping in mind, although it is cumbersome, it's there to help protect you. So you don't want somebody to come back and say, Patty, we gave you a check, but it never went to St. Vincent de Paul or something of that nature. So just be cognizant of these controls. These are certainly National's best practice recommendations of what should be done. And if you guys have further questions and you want to discuss with me individually, any concerns that you have offline, we can do that at another time as well.
Okay, the other thing that I do is any checks that come in addressed to St. Vincent de Paul or to Mary Help Christians for St. Vincent de Paul, and they recognize that it's a check for St. Vincent before they open it, they just put it in my mailbox. I bring them home, do the deposit slip, and I take a scan of every check I received, and I keep all those on my computer. So I do have a record of all the checks that I have received and cashed. And so, you can get the numbers on them and stuff like that. So I do not scan the deposit slips, but I keep the deposit slips. I have deposit slips going back 30 years. Or not that far, but it's a big box.
Okay, we're going to move along here. On this slide, again, this is National's recommendations. What I do want to point out here is the written procedures for collecting, counting, recording, and acknowledging donations. I don't know if your conferences have written procedures, but I will say, even at the council level, we have a manual for accounting. It's come in very helpful for us, and if somebody has to leave or somebody is unavailable, that is there for the next person that comes in. So if you're changing treasurers and the next treasurer comes in, they may be able to figure out what to do. You want to make sure they're not losing the purpose of the controls that you have in place as well. So making sure that as you're transitioning to someone else or filling in for someone while they're out on vacation, the controls are written down and they know what to do.
Okay, I have to leave now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, JC. Okay, the recording donations here, what I wanted to hit on here, and I was going to ask by a show of hands, but unfortunately I can only see 3 of you at a time, so I can't really do very much here. But what I was really interested to see is, National recommends keeping a log of each donor, or I'm sorry, recommends acknowledging each of their donations each time they make a donation. So what I was curious and hoping to spur a discussion on is if you guys do that. If you typically do it each time a donation is made. If not, I was just going to suggest that it is a great way to help with donor relations for that acknowledgement, but I can't see many of you, so I won't ask for that show of hands at this point, but I will just point that out.
One problem that I'm running into, and I know the previous treasurer did too, is when they set up electronic giving for the parish and now the parish family, it means that those do not come to us direct in any check other than from the parish itself. So they're all wrapped up into one check given to us once a month. And so then we've had to pester them for who those donations came from. And sometimes we get a spreadsheet and it's not easy to figure out where these donations are coming from. And I'm never quite sure if the parish itself is acknowledging the gifts, especially those that are larger, over the 250. So it's kind of left us assuming, well, if if the parish is counting it and just writing us a check, then they must be taking care of the acknowledgements. But it does leave us kind of feeling like, well, are they being thanked or not? So we're having a tough time with that. And the electronic giving puts kind of a barrier, and I know I've found out who some of them are, but I don't even know if I'm supposed to know to contact them. It's like, were they donating through our parish? And then would it be weird for them to suddenly hear from me? So I don't know. I don't know if the rest of you have issues with how to handle the electronic giving and who the donors are and how to acknowledge them or track that. I don't know if they're getting double thank yous or like if the parish says they gave $250 and I say they gave $250, it's just kind of made it difficult to a little more difficult to track.
Our parish has said any St. Vincent de Paul donation needs to come from our conference. So they don't acknowledge with a response donations, even if they're made out to St. Luke for St. Vincent, it's still our responsibility to acknowledge the donation. We have, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but we have donors that give every month. So I would be writing anywhere from 75 to 100 thank yous every month. So we were just doing that at the end of the year, but that's still 100 or so that we're writing at the end of the year. So actually we were looking at just doing the 250 single donation, or we hadn't really decided. I don't know if there's a threshold for a total annual donation that we should be sending a direct thank you to. We've thrown out ideas of maybe just putting a big thank you in the bulletin, and if anybody wants a detail of their donations, we can provide that because we keep that data. But it's just an awful lot to do that many letters. But if it's something we should be doing, we can maybe get a volunteer to do that. But that's kind of how we're looking at it right now.
Well, I know it's not required. It is recommended from a donor relations standpoint. The over 250, we'll talk about that on the next slide. I was really happy to see that National included that in their handbook this time around. I don't know what exactly your conference should do So yeah, I would be curious to hear what everybody else does, but it is a good opportunity if you have a conference member that maybe is not, can't get around that well. So maybe they can't get out to do any other home visits or anything like that, but maybe they could sit at home and send out some thank yous or whatnot, that it's a good opportunity for that type of person. Any other conferences have any other best practices or anything on that that they would like to share? We'll move on to the next. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. This is Michelle from Emmanuel, and we just do it all at the end of the year. We send a thank you at the end of the year for donations. So we don't send every month for people who donate. We just send a thank you card to everybody who made a donation for the year.
Thanks for sharing.
So that's
Has
at
anybody,
Emmanuel.
has anybody used Serveware to do that? I started entering the ones that I do know who they are, where I actually get the checks and I have the envelope, and I've been putting the whole thing in. So their name, address, envelope number, all that's in Serveware, but I haven't gotten to a point. But usually, and if it was one that was 250 or more, then I send a thank you right then. But I was wondering if anybody's used Serveware to accumulate the donations and do like a year-end statement. I don't know if it has that capability or not very well. Is it something you've ever used to generate statements and reports, or statements and thank yous? Nobody?
Go ahead. We usually do, under receipts, under financial receipts,
Mm-hmm.
there's a description field. And that's where we put the member's name and address. It also for each time they donate, there's a separate record for that. And then you can do a dump of that data to a CSV file and then load it into Excel and sort it. As long as you're consistent with in the description area with people's names, if you every time they donate, you put their same name in that description field, then you can sort it and then you can group them together that way. That's how we do it.
Okay, you don't use the donors, because there is a donor area of Serveware.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Also, Christine, with the IRS, we send IRS letters out in January, acknowledging what they've donated for the year, and we say thank you in that letter. So I'm hoping that takes care of this requirement. Yep.
Well, for the 250, yeah, absolutely. So for the 250, what that is saying for the IRS is each time a donor makes a donation, a single contribution of 250 or more, that if they want to claim it on their taxes, they need to have their acknowledgement from us, from St. Vincent de Paul. So this is really, we're doing it on behalf of the donor, because if the donor wants their tax write-off, they need that from us. You can do it in two ways. Each time they give a gift of 250 or more, you can send a separate acknowledgement, and that can be for their taxes. Or similar to what I think you're saying, Kevin, is at the end of the year, you can send them a list of each donation that they've given to you, as long as it lists each one that's 250 or more separately, and then make sure that you're not aggregating any of those that are less than 250. So if they give 10 gifts of $25, don't aggregate all of those and say they gave $250. So that's absolutely something that you can do that way as well. But it is talked in the handbook a little bit more if you guys want to read any more about that. But I was really happy to see, I know last year's training, we had a lot of discussion around this. So I was happy to see that they clarified some items for us around this. Okay, so based on the conversation that we just had about Serveware and how you can accumulate total amount donated by donors, it sounds like there may be some more conversation to be had for this slide. For the 990 purposes, we have to disclose on Schedule B each donor that gave $5,000 or more cumulatively or individually. Now, this has been a requirement for a while. We've been needing to make some improvements, and so this is based on National's guidance here. We need to start doing this. So we do it at the council level already, but now what we will be needing from the conferences is in January, the same time that you would submit that 1099 spreadsheet, we will be providing to you a spreadsheet to track all this information and to turn into us. When it goes on our 990, it goes only to the IRS. We do put a 990 on our website, but the 990 that goes on our website is for public disclosure only. So it will not disclose any of this donor information. So you don't have to worry about that. But it sounds like this may take some work to figure out how to best accumulate this information for each of the conferences. I don't know how you're currently doing it in Serveware. I know, Joanne, you were asking how can you get that information out of there. It may take some work. Maybe if there's someone that's a Serveware guru, maybe they'd be able to play. I am not. I do not use Serveware, so unfortunately, I'm not a lot of help here. But maybe there's a Serveware guru who could play around and see the best way to get it out of there. Or like Kevin said, there is that manipulation where if it's in, you can download it to a CSV file and then Excel. Or maybe you guys already keep it in Excel and it's easy as sort. So I do realize this may require some more conversation on the best way to do this, but this is a new requirement that we do have this year.
And I don't think, I didn't even really look into this, the report part of it. I was just wondering if anybody else had been using it to track their donors. Because I was starting to do it. I don't have, obviously I wasn't there the whole year, so I don't have a year's worth of data, but I thought, well, if this will make it easier, I'll do that. And I think I think if we have to get a total, which I think is going to be pretty limited as far as in hours, I don't know that we would have that many, so I don't think it'd be real cumbersome. But if I think Serveware will allow me to run a report and I'd at least be able to see the totals, and then I can go from there if I've got some that are over that 5K. So.
Christine, I have a question on the those giving over 5,000 or more. Is that individual persons, or does that include foundations or organizations? Like Corner Cupboard sends to a lot of, and it accrues more over the year. Does that include those as well?
Yes, anybody, an organization, a foundation that gives you 5,000 or more. So, that's an interesting thought, Pat. I hadn't thought about. As Corner Cupboard could be under 5,000 for you, but it could be over 5,000 in aggregate for all the conferences.
So the church gives me 50,000 a year annually. I have to include them?
Is it coming from the church, or are they collecting donations from their parishioners?
All our donations are made out to the church. There may be a memo line for St. Vincent de Paul. St. Vincent de Paul only gets a single check from the church on a weekly basis. We do not know who the donors are, and all we do is, but the church ends up giving us, $50,000 a year.
So the church, in this instance, then they are sending the thank you and acknowledgements to the donors?
Yeah, every collection in which the way our church envelopes are, all the envelopes are for St. Vincent, or for the parish. And then there are memo lines on the envelope, but the church will collect and consolidate all donor information. So if I gave to Mission Sunday, if I gave to the Passionates missionaries, all of those collections first go to the church, and then they subdivide that and send a check to each one of those organizations. So if I want to send money to the Women's Guild, I still make it out to the church, but I put the memo line is, and I put it in a Women's Guild. So,
That's interesting. They won't share that information with you, so you're not able to ever thank your donors.
we do our thank yous in another way. We provide a quarterly bulletin of the assistance,
Okay.
and that seems to have worked for the last 15 years. They're quite happy with that.
Okay. Well, I would say in that instance, you would not be listing the parish because the parish isn't really giving the money to you. They're just passing it through. It's coming from the donors. And I guess if you don't have that donor information, then you won't be able to pass that along to us to put in the 990.
Okay.
That is surprising. They won't share that though with you, but that's currently the way that it works, it sounds like.
If I asked them, can I have the 500 names of the people that donated in the last year? I'm sure they would give it to me. I'm not sure what I would do with it.
Okay.
I have a question. Our parish is giving us some of the money from the CMA that we get back from the donations that have been made. If you go over, over your goal, some of that comes back to the parish, and the parish has been giving us some of that money. Now, if that's over the 5,000, where do we go with that? Do we have to send the parish office a thank you for that?
Well, I mean, that would be up to you. For tax purposes, the parish wouldn't need it because they're not going to be doing tax reporting anyways. And that's the reason why you're doing the 250 thank you. So they wouldn't need to be thanked for that. Would they go on this list of donations over 5,000? Yes, they would go on that.
Okay, so we would have to report that separately to you then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You guys have great questions.
Hey, Christine, Dan Monahan, real quick. If we're doing twinning more than $250, do we have to do anything special on that?
No, and we'll talk about twinning towards the end of the slide here. I may have to pick up the pace here of going through the slides, but we'll talk about twinning at the end. And no, you would not have to report that because we are all intercompany. We're all one organization. Okay, Nick, did you want to talk about anything on this slide?
I don't think so. I think it's already been covered.
Okay. This next slide is again just getting at the safeguarding to making sure that we're protecting ourselves. So just be sure that you're aware of these controls, and if anybody has any questions, we can discuss those. They are important controls to have in place. Rental payments. What I'll highlight on this is make sure that you get that W-9. I'm sure a lot of your conferences are familiar. Get that W-9 before you make that landlord the payment. If you wait to do it after they have their rental payment, they are no longer incentivized to make sure that they get you that W-9. So it is much easier if you do that up front. Make sure that you are somehow contacting the landlord and confirming that there is a lease, how much is owed on the lease. And then those of you that have been around for a while, you know this was Deb's hot topic. This was a big topic for fraud that unfortunately some of you were more familiar with last year, that you want to make sure that you're confirming who you're writing that rental payment to is indeed the owner of the property. And you can do that by searching the county's auditor's website and making sure that who is listed as the owner of that property matches the lease and who's you're making the payment with. Now, that could be a little bit different situation if they have a management agreement in place. And in that case, you're going to want to see the management agreement where you're making the check out to someone other than the landlord. But that is indeed what's supposed to be happening. Very important steps there. 1099s, nothing new here in this area. But again, this is just as a refresher for those of you that are newer. The IRS requires that organizations file 1099s for all rental payments to landlords that are greater than $600. So good news for starting in 2026, that amount is going to increase to 2,000. But for 2025, we still have $600 to work with. So the reason, as we talked about being option one, we're one entity, one legal EIN, we have to aggregate all rental payments from all the conferences into one spreadsheet, so we can then see how much we paid each individual landlord to see if they need a 1099. So just a refresher on this, if anybody has any questions, you can ask at any point during the slide. I know I'm going to start getting into things a little bit faster just to make sure we can get through it all. But
I do have
Yeah.
a question. I've submitted a few times, but I've not gotten an answer on, could we base the format of the spreadsheet for the 1099s on the, it's called in Servware, there is a, what's it called? It's the, I think it's like the housing, it's the housing provider summary report, and it lists each landlord alphabetically and then by month, and you can run it for a year, and then it gives a grand total of all the rent of for each of those months totaled up. So it's got all of the information there. We don't usually put the EIN in there just for privacy purposes, so I would need to still put it into download it and then add the EINs, but my work would all be done for me since I'm putting all that into Servware anyway. Is it possible that we could use that as a starting point? And I know not everybody uses Servware, but when I look at the 1099 report spreadsheet that the district sends us to fill out, it's like, oh, the same information's here. If I could just use this and then add what you need, it might be a little bit different format, because it's going across by month instead of down. But is that a possibility? We could do that to save a lot of work?
So I think maybe you and Abby and I, and if there's anybody else that uses that report as well, maybe we can have a call or a meeting to get together to discuss that. It may be possible to take what you're getting out of that report and somehow put it in a format that's easier to put it in the format that we already have the report in. I will say the problem with changing the report, what we have to do now when we get all these reports, poor Abby, she has to take all 30 plus Excel spreadsheets and aggregate them into one Excel spreadsheet and then sort them all. So
I'm wondering, do you have much ability to have the Servware team, if you just needed to, like, say, okay, could you just tweak that report so it does what we need it to do? Would they do that for you, or at the district level, or not?
I don't use Servware. I know Deb was kind of more involved with Servware and what its capabilities were. So maybe if we have a meeting offline to talk specifically about this, but whatever some conferences do, all conferences have to do. We need to make sure that everyone is consistent, because we do have to get it all into one spreadsheet to then upload to the IRS. So maybe if you can reach out to me, maybe after this meeting, maybe we can see if we can get together and discuss it in more details.
Okay, sure.
And if there's anybody else on the call that is involved and has the same similar thoughts, if you would also reach out to me, then we can see if we can get something scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
I have I put a call in today to Servware about a completely different issue. And they haven't called me back yet, but when they do, I will also raise that question for you, Joanne.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of others for the Servware team too, when I don't want to put too much on them all at once, but I think a few little tweaks will make it easier to use, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's you and I also meet and see what ideas.
Okay, that sounds good.
Great, thanks.
So for now, the way that we're currently doing the 1099s, you'll need to obtain the W-9. You'll need to put it in the current tracking spreadsheet that we have. You'll want to make sure that even if you can see that another conference has a W-9 in Serveware, you still need a W-9 yourself because you need to know what that EIN number is and be able to record it in that spreadsheet. So when we get that spreadsheet, it needs to have all of the EINs listed for all the rental payments. And when you're doing that spreadsheet, I know this is a small thing, but again, we're taking 32 conferences and aggregating them. Make sure that when you're entering the EIN, include the dashes in there. On the annual report, this is not new either, but I just want to highlight this because we get questions on this. When you're looking at home visits, if you are a family of 4, as an example, and you do 3 visits, you're going to count that as 12 visits because it's 4 people, 3 times 12 visits that you'll want to make sure you're recording in there. Other in-person visits, this is where you're going to record your telephone contact. So if you're having telephone contact with anyone, make sure you record that under the other in-person visits. I think I'm going to, in the essence of time, we'll just skip over this one. Nothing new here. If you have questions at the end, you can ask me about that. Quarterly reports. So Abby, I am going to turn it over to you. She has a very tedious process of going through and reviewing all of the quarterly reports, taking all that information, entering it into our accounting software so we can aggregate it. She compares it all to the bank statements. We do our analytics to look for anything unusual. She has quite the work cut out for her on this. So as she has gone through and done this, she's got some best practices and some questions that she would like to point out. So Abby, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Christine. So first, I want to say thank you to all of you for all of the work you put into these quarterly reports. I know they take time, but I do really appreciate the timeliness with which you return those reports to us, as well as if I do have questions, the speed with which you respond. I do appreciate that as well. Hopefully the report as we have it is helpful for you, is organized in a way that is helpful for you to make it easier for the reconciliation process. The big thing I wanted to highlight this year was a change for many of you, not all of you, but the increase in the number of conferences who now have multiple bank accounts. I know if you're with certain banks like WritePat or for other security measures, many of you now have 2 or even 3 different accounts. And I know that can add some confusion when you are doing the quarterly reports. So Christine, if you go to the next slide for me. So there are 2 ways that you can report the information on that comes from all of your reports. So even if your savings account just has some interest and transfers, we do still want that information reported to us, as well as then if there are deposits directly into those accounts, they are then also recorded. So the first way you can do that is to use the quarterly report template and use essentially one report for each account that you have. So if you have from WritePat, like a business checking, a business share, and a money market, you would submit 3 reports. Each of those would have the beginning balance of each individual account, the end balance, as well as any transfers and activity that happened there. The other option that you have to do this report is to consolidate all of the activity in the multiple accounts into one report. That does mean that when you are doing the bank balances, you do need to include the total balances across all accounts rather than just the checking account. I think at the district right now are recommending doing the multiple accounts, multiple reports. It allows for that very clear understanding of where the money was deposited, when it got transferred. It's easy for others who come in to look and see, less math to do to get onto that report. However, we do recognize that a lot of you, a good number of you are currently doing a single consolidated report, and we are not asking you to change that. That is okay to continue doing and to continue to consolidate if that is something that works well for you and that you can use well to effectively report on that. Are there any questions with the multiple accounts?
It's okay to put the multiple reports in a separate sheet in the worksheet or in the workbook. You don't have to do 3 separate Excel spreadsheets. You can put all the reports in one spreadsheet.
Correct. Yeah, you can have the separate tabs at the bottom. And what we'll do when we send out the revised one for next year, I will already set up a couple tabs so that way it is available if you want to do it that way. But yes, separate tabs on one Excel document is a good way to go with that.
I'm finding on the quarterly report, the master that is given out to put the quarterly report, there's not formulas in spots that where they need to have formulas, or the formula is wrong so that when you do your thing, it calculates things wrong.
We'll
Is
take
there
a
any-
look at that before we send it out and make sure formulas are in the right spot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't seen any of that, so it'd be interesting to see if there is something there.
I will definitely take a look and review the reports for sure.
If I don't know, the one I've got, if you look, the cash in it doesn't add up. Cash out doesn't add up because there's no formula in it. I know how to put the formula in and I go ahead and do it, but off their master that was on the website that they sent out, you have to do it yourself. And then there was other problems in that I've corrected. So that's all I know.
We will take a look and make sure it's revised
Now,
for you for this next time.
Abby, did you get my email I sent you on the?
Yes, I did.
And you see that I got it corrected.
Yes, yeah, I am good. And I will send you the follow-up to confirm that tomorrow. But yes, I
Okay.
did see that.
And
I
I
do
sent you
see
a
how-
backup document to show you that I didn't pull that out of the air. So,
Yes, which I appreciated. So thank you.
okay, thank you.
So the other thing with multiple accounts is then the transfers between the accounts. So make sure that you are recording any transfers between accounts on those transfer lines on the quarterly report. That will make sure that we're not accidentally double recording donations or money that comes in or expenses that you have. If you are using one report, those numbers should be the exact same. If you are using separate reports, if you have 2 accounts, the transfers in on the one should equal the transfers out on the other report. And that is all on transfers. So Christine, you can go to the next slide. This is something you should all be familiar with. It's at the very end of that of the quarterly report. The one thing with this is just make sure that you are recording the actual bank balances in on the beginning balance line and the end balance line, which is not listed on this slide. But if you do that, that way you will be able to see if the reporting you have does match the bank rather than starting with the reported balance and the calculated balance from previous quarters. And if you are a conference who waits to report the activity of your conference until the check actually clears your bank, you do not need to put the information about the outstanding payments in those lines. However, if you do record it once you write the check or pledge the assistance, please use those lines, and that will allow your reporting to match the bank balances easier. Any questions on this piece of the quarterly report? All right, Christine, next slide. So as Christine mentioned before, since we are part of one organization with twinning, we want that to cancel out when we review. So it's important that you do record all those payments received by or provided to another conference in those transfer lines. This is especially important with those among our conferences in the district. There is also a line for those, for if you provide assistance, twinning assistance to a conference outside of the DDC. For example, the Springfield St. Vincent de Paul Conference. We will want to record those on the separate line so that when we do our reporting to national, they can do a similar step of working to eliminate those and recognizing those as kind of transfers amongst organizations. I think that was it on the transfers. Any questions?
I'm glad you mentioned that on the twinning, because I did see in that draft national handbook, it said, you know, not to include the conference twinning. And I thought, oh, well, that's all we have. So I was about ready to not track that way anymore. But so you're saying we do report it to district, but you won't be rolling that up to national, I guess, is the way it works. Okay.
Right. What the national considers twinning is a little bit different than when we refer to twinning here at our district council. For us, it really is recording intercompany transactions between the conferences or that the conferences may have with Special Works. Since again, we all roll up under one EIN, we can't be double counting revenue and expense that isn't really there. But we covered a lot of that. But there was great questions. I appreciate all the questions and feedback. And I know I have a few to-dos after this and that I'm going to get some follow-up after this with some further questions or meetings. But is there anything else that we covered? Because we started to go through it quicker to make sure that we could get done in time. But is there anything else that would be helpful or any other questions that any of you have for other treasurers that we did not discuss that you would like to have talked about?
Yeah, Bill Burkhardt, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Bill.
Tell me more about this, the new treasurer's manual, whatever it is. It says it's draft. Is it something we're using, or is it still a draft, or we're supposed to be using it now? Are they going to publish it officially? What's the deal here?
Yep, it is officially published August of 2025. It was official. And Nick, I can't remember. Did you send it out with these slides?
I did. I sent you
But
out
it
a
says
link to it.
draft. It says draft, so that's why.
Oh, it still says draft on it?
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
I think the wrong one may have been attached then because
that could
mine
be it.
says published August 2025. So maybe the wrong one got sent out.
Yeah, sorry, I'll go find the right one and send it out.
Yeah, because I'd like to get, I guess we just get a copy of it. They'll probably publish it and you can get it online or something, I imagine, like you do other things.
Yeah.
Is it very long? I didn't even look at it.
I want to say it's 30 some pages.
Okay.
Is that right, Christine?
Yep, 24 pages.
Okay.
Even less.
Do you think they changed it from the draft to the published? Is it the same, do you think? What the draft that you sent out?
I think it's pretty much the same, but
Okay.
I didn't look carefully at it until they told me that it was no longer draft, that it was the real thing.
Okay.
It was the final.
I do have one big question that's been a tough one for our conference to figure out. And I think a couple of our team members were going to talk to you, Christine, but I don't know if they did. So I told them I'd bring it up here. And that is how to deal with gift cards properly. And there are in-kind gift cards that are donated. Sometimes it's for the Christmas event. Sometimes we go buy gift cards for specific purposes like fuel cards, sometimes for emergency groceries, and I forget what the other thing is. But then there's been a few times where our caseworkers have felt the need to buy even a more like a cash card when somebody needed a prescription, and that was the only way they could apparently pay for this prescription. And so it's been, I keep cautioning them, that gift cards can be like cash. And I tried searching online, the IRS, and CPA websites, and CPA website says kind of steer clear of them unless you can prove that they are using that gift card for the mission, the purpose that they're supposed to be using it for, which is difficult to prove unless they give you a receipt. And so it's such a tough thing, but it's also something that there is a need for at times. And so I just want to make sure that I'm logging them correctly, recording them correctly, using them correctly. And I was really hoping that this treasurer's manual would mention it. And it's like one little mention, a little sentence, and they don't give no guidance on actually how are we supposed to handle them, because IRS sometimes looks at them like cash, and that they got to be tracked and could be considered income to the neighbor, and all kinds of ramifications. But so what's your thoughts on that?
Just to give you a little insight, St. Francis of Assisi Parish, our conference, we have a Thanksgiving basket giveaway, and we got 40 gift cards we give out in the baskets. I log in every number, and then I have a log. I know exactly who we gave all those gift cards to. I also have all the gift cards that I give to the home visitors, and they have to sign out for these cards. I have the numbers logged in my book. So when they do give it out, they tell me when they gave it out, and who they gave it to. And then I can track that actually that gift card went to such and such person. And that's the way we do all these gift cards. It's a pain.
And how do you make sure that gift card, so a gift card was given to somebody, then how do you know how they used that gift card?
Well, we stay away from Kroger gift cards. We only go to Aldi's, because Aldi's, they don't sell beer, they don't sell cigarettes, but they do have the essentials. And that's what you're trying to do, is give that person, when you go visit them, if they need food, you're just trying to get them over the hump and give them the essentials. You can't control it after you give it away. You can't control if the person is going to use it for something else than what it was meant to be. But that's what we do at St. Francis.
Yeah, I didn't know about Aldi's. That's a good, and we did find there's one, I think it might be a Walmart. Is it Walmart special card, charitable type card, I think they call it.
Yeah, but
that you can order, and they cannot be used for
cigarettes. But the Walmart card probably is an easier card to sell to somebody.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing. Yeah, they could just be used,
but the Aldi's
for
one,
cash.
They have a very, very good value of food and everything. I shop at Aldi, so hey, can't be worse in the world. I hope that helps.
Yeah. So, does National give guidance on gift card usage and recording and procedures?
I have not seen, I know at the district level, we do not do gift cards. I know several years ago, we used to ask for gift cards to hand out for guests in the shelter. And it was just it just opened too many doors for fraud. So we stopped doing that, but I like Tom, how he records each of the gift card numbers. The people that he hands them to that are taking them out, they're signing out for them, saying what neighbor they gave them to. So he has that tracking in place, but they are like was said, they are just like cash. So they could easily walk away. So at the district level, we have stopped and do not do gift cards at all. But I'm sure you conferences may have different cases. And I think what's important is like what Tom discussed, is what controls do you have in place to prevent fraud or them being misused for the intent that they were given for.
Yeah, I think you can reduce, but probably never completely prevent. But as long as you're doing the best you can. I guess that's all they can expect. And then, and I don't know if anybody has anything more on the gift cards, but the other thing that's been tough for us to figure out is a credit card for, well, there's been some cases where, because the shelters are full, and there'll be a tough case where somebody needs a couple nights in a motel room, but we've heard of problems with that where then they don't leave when they were supposed to, or they keep getting charged to that credit card. So there's a lot of liability on a credit card if you start using it for things like a motel room. So do most of you not use credit cards at all, or are you just using them real specifically, or how do you mostly handle that? Any places that, because there are some times where it just seems like you need one, but so far we haven't bought or haven't gotten one. Do you all have credit cards or not?
Well, it's at St. Francis, we don't have, I'm the treasurer and all we've got is a checking account. We do not have credit cards.
Okay.
That just opens up too big of a chance for somebody abusing them.
Yeah. There's one
we
more.
we at Queen of Martyrs do motels. We try not to do them very often, but we use a debit card primarily for that. And I believe our treasurer, he's the one that typically does that and goes and pays for the room. And he asked to get a paper that signs that he is waiving any responsibility for damages to the room, etc. So he's only paying for that night, that day, with no damages.
But then they've got that debit card number. I don't know.
Yes, they do, and that can be an issue, which is why I don't personally use debit cards.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, because the liability is limited on those two. Credit card, at least you've got some recourse, but debit cards are tough. Yeah,
I
those are
agree.
a couple sticky issues.
I just put on there when I worked for Premier Health, we would give employees, well, we wanted to give employees gift cards as thank you cards, which we ultimately ended up doing. However, and it was a tracking nightmare, so we ended up getting away from that because it did have to be included as income and it had to be taxed.
Yeah.
And so, yes, so, but that was an employer-employee relationship. I don't know if it's different with our neighbors and if it's really any different than cash.
Yeah,
So-
because somewhere, I don't know where I read that, maybe it was one of those CPA websites. It's like, well, you may be, if you're giving them and they can be considered cash, could you even be accidentally putting that neighbor out of their eligibility for certain benefits? Because but I mean, the chances of it making its way up to IRS reporting is probably slim, but still there's all those worries about how to properly use them so that we're not causing more problems. But yeah, and that's where we tried to just say, okay, there's enough need out there of just rent and utilities and things like that. And if we just stick to those things, but it's hard when you've got somebody that's desperate, and just the rent and utilities aren't going to cover it. But so
I got a call early in the summer from the manager of the Red Roof Inn in Miamisburg, and he was saying, we'd like, if you have conferences who have a neighbor who needs to be put up in a hotel, we hope that you'll consider us. We'll work out a special deal for you, whatever. And I had included his name and number in conference notes earlier in the summer. But what you all are saying now is maybe I need to go back to him and ask him if there's a way that that we can pay ahead of time without using a card, and also have waive damages and that sort of thing. So they were actually, Red Roof Inn was actually, they had a table in the exhibit area at the National Assembly this past week.
Oh,
In Louisville. So they're connected with St. Vincent's. The
oh, huh.
corporation is somehow connected with St. Vincent's, apparently, which I
Okay.
didn't know.
That's good to know, because I think it was a Red Roof Inn that the one that they were trying to help was already there, and I think they needed to stay another night or something. But they would only take cash or a credit card, I think is what it was. They would not take a check. So it's like, well, we can't, you know, and I didn't want anybody using their personal credit card or anything like that. So
For sure.
yeah,
Well, I'll follow up with the manager from the Red Roof Inn.
yeah, and in fact, we even talked about, well, if we could get them to, like have some set agreement that swears, you will not be held liable if they overstay or if they damage your, and we all figured, well, we'll never be able to get them to do that, but maybe you can. I didn't realize Red Roof Inn had been pursuing that.
It's worth an ask.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you all for the great discussions and the comments and questions you had. As always, if you have further questions that Abby or I can help you with, you can feel free to reach out to us or with Nick, or also other treasurers. You are great resources for each other. So maybe you met someone new here on the call that maybe someone that would be good to reach out to with questions on how they do things that Abby or I don't do. So feel free to do that. And then Nick, would you close us in prayer, please?
Sure. I just want to say that in a few months ago, Vincentian brought in and actually gave to us a copy of the rule from the early 1900s, and it was in in pristine condition. And I was paging through it, and I was like, man, there's a lot of stuff in here about plenary indulgences. So I just want to bring back that spirit and say that you all deserve many, many plenary indulgences. Get yourselves out of purgatory, get out of jail, free card. All right. Go straight to heaven because of all your amazing work that you all have done and continue to do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's pray. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, we give you thanks that you have allowed us to work together and serve you during this meeting. We ask your blessing upon our endeavors and upon all present this evening. May your love and grace continue to guide us in everything that we do today and in the future. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks again, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Christine
you.
and Abby. You guys are awesome.